the Burnett Collective, we think of ourselves as kind of sitting in a unique spot within our category. We often have our conversations with CMOs that are less about replacing agency A with agency B, and that conversation tends to start with a little bit more of I have a lot of agencies, I have external partners, I've got internal partners. How do I get all of this to work better for me? How do I become more efficient? How do I get the pieces to connect without my team as much as we are, so that we're not agency wranglers or agency managers and we can get to the work easier? Because as you know, CMOs, portion of their job that has to deal with agencies is only, 25, 30% of their day job, but it takes up an extraordinary amount of time. So we do searches, we do a lot of matchmaking with our clients, but we also do a lot around, as our clients would say, CMO whisperer, how to help them do their jobs more efficiently, more effectively. Sometimes that means bringing on partners. Sometimes that means sitting in and doing some of the work with them and acting as a bit of a extension of the CMO's team.
So Casey, what do you see as the most significant shifts in what clients expect from agencies today?
I don't know that it's a big shift in what they are what their expectations are over the last couple of years. I think that their patience for it, though, is probably a little bit less. So, still being nimble, being proactive. It's all of those things that make a CMO or a VP of marketing's jobs a little bit easier on them, are still the number one pain points whenever we talk to them about agencies. It's that help me do my job easier, better, faster, so that I can focus on other tasks. That is still a major pain point. Obviously, you have things like technology and AI and all of those things that are part of what agencies need to deliver and an expectation from clients now. But overall, I think that those all fit underneath the help me do my job faster and easier and better kind of umbrella that agencies, I think sometimes forget. And it's an area where when you can be successful at being that partner, helping clients figure out how to be a little bit more efficient, how to instead of spending 50% of their time on agency needs, spending 40% or 35%, that goes a long way. When you're that partner that can help them figure out how to, spend a few more hours on their day and other tasks, it's well received.
That's great insight. Since you mentioned AI, I'm going to ask an AI related question.
Of course.
Which is, do you see clients wanting to lead their agencies in terms of understanding and use of AI, or do you see it as the reverse, that clients would prefer their agencies to be on the cutting edge and kind of leading them through this evolving technology?
I think one of the great things about trends in this industry is for every 5 that go one direction, I can show you 10 that go another direction. And that really comes down to, a lot of the relationship between a CMO and a chief technology officer within an organization, whether they are pushing forward as an entity in whole, or if they're lagging a little bit behind from a software and a technology stack, then maybe it falls to the agency. What I've found with a lot of our clients, at least, is that when it comes to operations, when it comes to kind of internal stack and software and AI implementation internally, a lot of that is driven by the client and with their partnership. But they are still, even if they're well advanced in that area, they are still looking to their agency partners, at least from a marketing perspective, and how to implement it, whether it's through production or creative or whatever other areas it is. I do see that kind of role where they lean to the agencies for the marketing expertise.
As the line between agencies, consultancies, and platforms blur, how are you seeing RFPs and search processes evolve?
This is a great question, and I think one that's super timely. Of the last few searches that we've managed, we've actually had either somebody from IT, somebody, chief technology officer, somebody who's actually participated in some of those pitch presentations, evaluations of the agencies, through the RFI, the chemistry sessions is the way we do it, and then into the final presentations, simply to provide that point of view. I think that one of the big challenges for agencies, and we might come on to this in a little bit more detail later, is clients want to own their data. And that seems to be something that we hear over and over and over again from our clients. And so it becomes this question of, do we go with an agency and their stack and their technology and their AI and all of that, where we're wedded to a system within an agency vertical, or do we piece together best in class through our partnership with our technology teams internally? Or do we look for an external partner like an Adobe or Oracle or any of the myriad that there are? And that seems to be the conversation that's happening upstream of, do we want agency to be a contributor or an owner of the platform?
If the client is more comfortable owning their data, the question from the agency is going to be, how can we seamlessly access it and use it to your benefit?
Absolutely. And that is a lot of the rub, where you get into, everything looks good on paper. We can access this data. Can you access this data? Can you give us this data? Of course we can. And then you get into practice, and connecting the pipes is always much harder and more difficult than expected. And you can only get part of the data, and you got to create lookalikes, or you got to do all this other modeling. And I think that's one of the challenges as our very tech forward clients are finding, is that you can try to piece together a best in class, but it is awfully difficult to get everything to work together from an internal perspective, and then also from plugging in the agencies and just giving them just even the insight into the data, little less getting the information back from agencies.
That's good. That's going to be an interesting challenge, because obviously to do the kind of work that clients expect, they're going to need client data.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah. Okay.
I think it's one of those areas where I feel like we're almost at a junction, and there's always going to be clients that want to go one way or another. But it does seem to me that as we're running RFPs, it's less about show me your tech stack and your platform and how you operate within it. And here is ours. This is what we have. How do you supplement it, and how do you build off of it and connect into it? So it's less of a, I want to buy your solution, and more of a, here's 90%, if we're 80% of the way there, how do you complete us and make it work together?
What qualities will define the most future fit agencies in the next 3 years?
That's a super broad question, Matt, but I think
I know.
It's like, what agency are we talking about, right? But ultimately, if we're thinking about from a creative or an integrated perspective, I think that the thing that we are losing sight of with some of these conversations is still the reliance and importance of creativity, whether it's technology and creativity, whether it's AI's impact on creativity, whatever it is. Ultimately, whenever we select a new helping the client select a new agency partner, it always comes down to the creative. It still comes down to that creative impact that an agency can make. And I do fear that there is some of this shift in the industry with this focus on the platform, that we're missing some of that craft. And I think that those that can find that balance, you need to be able, there's no doubt about it, you can't survive in this world at scale without having the platform component, but you're also going to be in a very crowded competitive assessment area, where if you only provide the platform and can't provide the creative, then you're up against all of the tech and giants, and that is a very difficult place for agencies to play.
All right. So as we think about agency as platform, if you will, or as purveyor, and agency as strategic partner.
Sure.
Where do you see, and you kind of articulated a bit, but that overlap or tension between those directions?
I think the challenge with it is finding clients want an agency partner that can deliver across all of that. They ideally, right? You want an agency that can deliver an incredibly strong strategy, creative, media planning, whatever that deliverable is that comes out of the strategy. And they want flawless execution of it. And typically that entails, some sort of technology in order to implement and get it out there. Um, I think clients often find that agencies are really good at one and not maybe necessarily as good on the other. And I don't know. My gut would tell me that that has to do with talent. That has to do with the rate of and change pace of change within the industry. Hard to keep up on things, as well as client demand in terms of timing. Right, it's always faster. I need it now. You know, timing to get a campaign out the door has been compressed. I mean, to get the actual product out the door has been compressed. So I think that challenge is where those things overlap and you have that really strong relationship with clients, great. It works really, really well. And those are our strongest relationships that we've helped build with our clients. The challenge is when you have one or the other that seems to fall down. That's when the CMOs do call us and they say we need to go into a pitch. And the fact, kind of alluding to what I said earlier, the expectation is from clients, I have very little patience. I have to do this for my job now, right? I ultimately have a shorter tenure as a CMO. I need to make impact now. I cannot wait for the agency to figure this out. I will give them feedback once. I may give it to them twice. I expect there to be change. I expect them to deliver. And if they can't, I'm going to have to pull an RFP or a project to test because ultimately my job is on the line. And that I think has been, well, have seen that shift where clients are more open to project work and working with other agencies. I think they're faster to jump to it than they have been previously.
All right. So if you had to choose, let's say between the purveyor or platform and strategic partner, do you think one is, if you will, use an overused term, but do you think one is more future-proof for an agency than the other?
I mean, ultimately, who knows what the tech giants are going to do from a platform perspective, right? I mean, we've worked with them as clients. We understand some of what they're trying to do from a future perspective. Agencies are going to have to figure out how to do and deliver both. But if I'm putting my chips on one thing, I still want you as that strategic partner. You're ultimately, that is what we go to agencies for. I can do the platform component elsewhere. It's much harder for me to go and get that strategy, that super strong creative, that incredibly insightful media planning, whatever it is that I'm getting from your members. That's what I need. That is the core of what I am as a marketer and what you need to deliver. When it comes to the platform component, yes, it's nice when they have it and it works together and cohesive. When it doesn't, I'm going to go find that platform somewhere else. May not be the sexiest of topics where it's like, of course, agencies need to be the platform, but if you're not a strategic partner, then you're not an agency. You're just a tech company.
Mm-hmm. How do you think procurement metrics are evolving to value new forms of partnerships?
It's interesting. I think that as procurement, and I say this with all due respect to my procurement colleagues, I think as they've gotten savvier in terms of understanding marketing and understanding what success means within marketing, um, you know, they themselves have gotten more up to speed. They're better at understanding what it takes to actually put together a relationship between clients and agencies. You know, it still is challenging. I will say that there are still lots of bad behaviors out there in terms of vendor management and things like that. But I have found a more openness I would say over the last couple of years from our procurement clients. And a lot of, I mean, half of our clients are procurement that hire us to assist them and work with the CMO, and half of our clients are CMOs. And I feel like there's a much more openness in having the dialogue with agencies, understanding that it takes two to tango, so to speak, right? And that their clients aren't always in the clients aren't always in the right, and driving costs down isn't always going to be the best for the business. So I have seen that shift over the last couple of years. Not to say that it's that case in every relationship,
Mhm.
but specific metrics I think have we've worked with a lot of marketing and procurement teams to actually put in kind of quarterly or semi-annual assessment of the relationships, and they're focused a lot more recently on the soft metrics. How easy is
Okay.
it to work? Are they proactive? Are they responsive? It kind of has shifted back. A couple of years ago, it was all about are they delivering and how are they moving the needle? And I think procurement is even starting to understand that an agency can only control so much, right? If clients are making decisions and picking creative, and an agency gives the information. And so, yes, it's important to have those hard metrics and in terms of alignment on what success is. But in terms of evaluating the relationship between a client and an agency, we're seeing a much greater return to kind of those softer metrics.
It's a very interesting perspective that, having just returned from ProcureCon, I can tell you was discussed over the past couple days. It's not just about saving money, it's about demonstrating value and, helping agencies sometimes figure out what their collective marketing clients want. So what do you think what are they struggling most with in terms of articulating what they really want from agencies?
Oh, wow, that is such a loaded question. It's a great question. If clients could articulate what they want from agencies, I might be out of a job. So um, I think that's why I get such a kick out of that question. I think ultimately, um, clients have a hard time clients have a hard time briefing agencies, a little less on a project, a little less telling them what I'm looking for from an prospective agency partner. And a lot of that is because it's that old adage of just cramming too much in, right? I think one of the services that we help with one of benefits, I should say, that we help our clients with when we get to an RFP or help them find agency partners, recommend agency partners, is really distilling kind of what it is that we're trying to achieve. It's not 10 bullet points, it's two. So I think that because there's so much on a CMO's mind or a VP of marketing's mind in terms of what they need to achieve, it becomes this like garbage pail of criteria that they're looking for from an agency. And as we like to say to our clients, it's like, great, I can find you an agency to solve all of those, but if you pick your top three criteria, I can find you the right agency. I guess it's really helping them narrow down kind of what they're looking for, which is difficult for clients because they need so much, right? They have so much on their plate. They're worried about the advertising campaign, and the agency that's doing the experiential isn't panning out, and the agency that is social really as strong as it needs to be. And so they kind of like just layer things in. And by doing so, my opinion on it is it kind of almost makes it to a lowest common denominator. Can you
Hmm.
do everything versus can you do these few things well?
It's interesting because, it's certainly in my experience, the best briefs take a lot away,
Yes,
right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Why they're called briefs. What do you think is the one thing that will never change about the value of agencies, no matter how these different models evolve?
I think we're seeing this as a fundamental shift in the marketplace with a lot of our clients that have gone through and done brought a lot of these services in-house. Is what they are finding is they get kind of myopic. They get very focused on their business. They don't get a lot of outside input when they are having kind of internal teams only focused on their tax. And I think that's one of the things that is underappreciated and undervalued with agencies. That collective experience of a cross category, a deep industry experience in the vertical, yes, but also best practices from whatever else in, automotive or finance or healthcare or whatever else it is. And I think, that's one of those things that is really hard for our clients that have taken so much of this internal, is great. You get through a couple of campaigns, but then you get to this place where you're almost talking to yourself. And agencies, external agency partners just have that external viewpoint. They are better at understanding the trends. They're better at pulling from additional areas. And I hope that never changes, because it's such a benefit to the client.
Well, I so wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, the cross-pollination of ideas that happen within an agency are astounding.
Oh, yes.
And, when you get right down to it, the other side of this is, all the in-house resources get a paycheck from the company. Potentially, that makes them less likely to push back hard and to plant a flag and say, no, we're going to do it this way. Whereas the agency people get a paycheck from the agency, right? And the
Right.
agency theoretically is paid to give great counsel, great advice, great creative, and to push for it.
I think it's absolutely true.
What do you think is the most dangerous assumption agencies are making about the future of the business right now?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think many are leaning too much into the promise of the technology, and what can be delivered. And what we have seen on several occasions with clients is the promises that are made during the pitch are not realized anywhere near the timeline of what was promised in a pitch. And, come year two, 2.5, 3, when it's not implemented and we're still struggling to get kind of the pipes connected and to get the data and the insights and implement AI and launch on TikTok and do this, which I understand is a lot to get done. So don't get me wrong on that front. That is where I think clients are starting to get maybe a little bit jaded around what is an agency promising me and what can they actually deliver.
Been in the business a long time, and under promise and over deliver has worked for a long time.
It has worked for a long time. I
I,
fear that on some of this, we've gotten to a stage where somebody else is going to say it and say that they can do it. So we need to be able to say that we can do it
yep.
too, or else we're not even going to be considered.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a problem, because if nobody can do it, then the partnership's based on false assumptions, which is just not a great thing anyway. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to the next generation of agency leaders to best prepare them for the future of our industry?
Um, I will tell you that there's two things that come up whenever I meet with a CMO for either the first time or re-engage with a prior client. And one is often maybe that CMO is new to a role, or maybe they've changed positions, whatever it is, maybe they've been recently elevated. A number of times that I hear, "Can you believe that the agency hasn't called me yet?" is astonishing to me. Pick up the phone and talk to your clients. Um, it is astonishing to me that a CMO can be in a role for 6, 8 weeks plus and the CEO of an agency hasn't called to introduce themselves to that new CMO. It's befuddles me. Um, the other thing that I would say to agency leadership is don't wait for there to be a problem to do the check-in, to put in the time on the relationship, and not just at the CMO level. Not just at the CMO level. CMO level and agency CEO, they're going to have their relationship. They're going to be talking big picture. Sometimes I would say get down 2 levels, right? Talk
Mhm.
to and have a relationship with a marketing manager or somebody lower so you can understand what's truly happening in the business. And also it serves that client, that marketer is feels like they're being treated importantly, that they are being heard by agency leadership. Because if they're not, and all they're doing is getting the same pushback from their account lead or their account manager, the only escalation point is to the CMO. And then the CMO is just hearing chirping in their ear back and forth, back and forth. Oh, I can't work with the agency. The agency, very rarely, and even if the relationship is good, very rarely is the feedback from a marketing manager to a CMO positive. It's just human nature, right? It's always the negative stuff. So, I think whenever you can head that off a little bit and have those relationships beyond the CMO, is going to benefit the long-term health of the relationship.